right.
It has started. All right. So our first Q&A session. Pretty exciting.
Yeah, this is Peter over here.
Hi, Peter.
Hey.
Hey.
This is Steven.
Hi.
Hi, Steven.
Hey, how you doing?
Pretty good.
This is, what was your name again?
Jeff.
Jeff. Right, I knew it. Jeff.
And Matt over here, right? Matt?
Otherwise known as?
Big
Don't.
Baby.
You don't worry about that.
All right.
You worry about yourself.
Corny introductions concluded. Let's continue.
All right, so we asked the community to give us some questions that we could answer in this discussion. What are some of the questions that they gave us, Matt?
Well, we pulled a couple of them out, and we think there's some good points we can hit in here. So let's just go down. The first one we got is from Dark Crimson.
Dark Crimson. That's a cool name.
I'm going to paraphrase most of them. I don't really want to quote everybody, but he's pretty much asking, how does the game flow if we don't include factions? A lot of Western players are kind of alienated to the fact that if there's no predefined sides for them, they don't really know, what their motivations are.
Right.
So, somebody want to take? How do we feel about that?
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good question. Personally, I've played a lot of MMOs, as I know you guys have. And I always felt restricted whenever I was a part of a game that assigned me to a faction. I felt I was missing out on half the community that was involved in that game. And a lot of the aspect of a massively multiplayer game like MMOs are is being able to choose your path, who you want to play with, forging alliances, and kind of the politics, the intrigue that's involved with playing the game with so many other people. And I felt factions kind of limited that. So I like that at Ashes of Creation, we're really focusing on allowing the community to drive their own path in those factions, so to speak, with players making guilds and
Right. Totally. And I mean, it's not like we're going to be leaving players to kind of, decide, I walk into the game, who is my side? We're going to be putting in things to help people create their own identities. One of those things is our node system. People are going to set up in cities, and those cities will be their own faction of a sort.
Right.
We kind of want to get away from the word faction, but people will have a way to say, this is my identity and that's the other side. And that might change over time. Your city might get destroyed, you might go to another city somewhere else, you create new friends, new alliances, and things will constantly be shifting, which I think will be cool for the long-term health of the game.
And I think that's another aspect of a non-faction based game that's intriguing, which is that there is a possibility for change.
Right.
If you're playing a game that's faction based, you're set there in that faction. And there's no movement.
And how meaningful is that faction anyway? It turns into this thing of blue players versus red players, and there's not a lot of identity there. There's no, okay, I'm with the elves. What does that mean? Well, there's not really any mechanisms to help me interact with that.
Yeah.
Here, you'll have a battle leader, a guy who, is rallying the troops. It's not going to be some NPC whose dialogue doesn't get updated, for years, and it will stay relevant throughout the course of the game.
For sure.
Yeah, factions seem like a very abrupt choice, and I think our focus in general is giving a more fluid choice, because choosing who you play with and where you play is much more nuanced than, like you said, red versus blue.
Right, absolutely. And it kind of coincides with the whole overarching message that Ashes is trying to convey, which is player choice should be paramount when you're involving this many players. Right. There shouldn't be restrictions in that regard.
Philosophically, we want to stay far away from us telling you what to do, as far as letting you decide what you want to do.
But also giving you mechanics that you can play with, right? A structure there that's loose enough to make those choices, but structured enough to give you gameplay opportunities.
Correct. So. Yeah. Good question, Dark Crimson.
Okay. Well, on that, speaking of the node system, I know a lot of our players are reading through our recent dev journal out, and a couple people are interested on if the world is built from the ground up by them, really. Does that mean it's empty? Does that mean there's nothing there? So we have a question from Jace, and he's essentially asking, will there be things in the world? Will there be POIs, or points of interest?
That's a good question.
Absolutely. It's so when we say the world is going to be, tabula rasa, it's going to be a place for people to go out and kind of like plant their flag and start to grow a civilization. That doesn't mean that nothing existed before the players arrived. There is a big backlog of lore that we have of what happened on this planet before the players come here. And those are going to be part of the POI system, the point of interest system, the quest system, and just places that should be interesting and exciting for people to discover.
Right.
There is a history to this world, and part of the game is going to be discovering that history. So there's going to be plenty of interesting things out there in the world.
Yeah, I think it's less of a fact that there's a blank canvas and more of the fact that you have a lot of paint to work with and creating your own picture.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? So like, when players move out into the world, they're not moving into emptiness. They're moving into a wilderness that has these storylines that you can uncover, these these items that you can find, these treasures that you come across, and that you can build upon when you reach that area, right? So, blank canvas, not so much. More along the lines of there are many different paths that a community can choose from and move down that path.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's civilization that's not there. It doesn't mean that there's not a world out there to explore. So we give you that first layer, right? And there's a lot of stuff to do in that layer. But then as players develop the world, more and more layers get added and more gameplay opportunities get created because of the push-pull between players in addition to the feedback we're giving to you in the world itself.
Right.
So
I think the words player development, it's the players are developing the world, but like you guys said, that doesn't mean it's blank. That might be like false for them to think that. So it's more that there are going to be dungeons in the world or points of interest, things like wizard towers or mines and woods to run through that are going to attract people and maybe become hubs for these people. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's completely blank and that they're making every inch of the game.
Right.
So that's,
right. We've got a job to do too, and we're going to do it.
Right.
Good question, Jace. Was it Jace?
Chase?
Yes.
Jace.
Jayce, right?
Jace.
Jaci.
Not quite a Planeswalker.
All right, well, tangentially related to that, we have a question from Asido, forgive me if I'm getting your name wrong, which I probably am, but he's curious, essentially, what do large guilds have access to? What do those player organizations that spring up, ground roots and people get themselves organized, what are they going to go out there and do? What are they going to, be filling their game time with?
That's a good question. I think that it's been pretty common in MMOs that a lot of content for guild play focuses around large guilds. And I think what we're trying to do is make sure that there's content that focuses both on small guilds, medium guilds, and large guilds. And we show that through a lot of the mechanics that are available to this guild play, whether it be leveling up the guild for certain skills, or taking castles, or participating in founding these nodes and towns. There's really a lot of focus on creating content for groups of players, whether it be small or large, to participate in as a community, both the broad community of the game and their local community of their guild.
Yeah, that's something you'll probably hear over and over again, is like the local gameplay versus the global gameplay, the micro gameplay of the individual player versus the group gameplay of guilds and the rest of the world. Right. Guilds will fight guilds. Guilds will recruit other guilds to help them fight guilds. There's a lot of layers to it that there's going to be plenty of content for guilds to do, and a lot of really exciting content. I mean, you mentioned taking castles, right? Castles are going to be huge and influential, and I think it's going to be a pretty big trip to watch people fight over them and find ways of taking advantage of them. So
I know me personally, when we used to play Lineage 2, those castle sieges were like the epitome of the 2-week, 4-week period, where you would see hundreds or even sometimes thousands of players on the battlefield, if your machine could struggle through it. But, but I mean, being able just to see that type of participation in an event is something that really only guilds can organize to an extent, right?
But just because a guild organizes it doesn't mean that other people who are not part of that guild can't participate.
Absolutely,
And I think that's one thing that we try to get away from, is that the castle sieges of old seem to be these huge, massive events only, and we try to make a lot of mechanics that are scalable. So you could have an individual player participating in events that are just as influential and as fun as large guilds participating in these huge world events.
Right.
And, it could be a band of 10 guilds participating in one event instead of maybe these 2 massive server guilds that sometimes happen.
Guilds will have a lot of activity-driven mechanics in the game that focus on changing the world and impacting the world around them. And it's not going to be just restricted to the large guilds, It'll be at a scalable level, like Peter was saying, including castles,
Right. And nodes. And I mean, there's lots of, at its core, right, a guild is just an organization of people, right? And as your guild levels up, you'll get perks, but there are things that are extra guild that are similar to that, right? The node provides, I guess I'm talking about things outside of guilds, so we should really just focus on what the guilds can do. So, guilds will have levels and
skills.
The guild's participation in events in the world will help to level that guild up. Guilds will be able to
have guild halls.
Right, have guild halls within nodes.
Guild housing. They'll be able to dedicate, time spent on developing nodes to have guild-specific buildings and guild-specific quests within the nodes.
Right, participating in the government of nodes through their guild hall.
Yep.
The castle system, of course, very big guild.
There will be guild-specific nodes associated with the castles that people can build up in order to enhance the defense of their areas. Guilds will exert influence over zones if they own castles for those regions. Being able to dedicate support potentially to the economic growth and or the military growth or the divine growth or the scientific crafting growth. Guilds will play a large portion because ultimately guilds focus, as you said, on community. They're just a community of players, a micro community within a larger community.
Right.
And those guilds are capable of achieving certain specific tasks in a more focused manner than the broader community.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think that kind of sums up guilds in a nutshell. There's a lot more to them, but I think that's a good overview.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a couple questions, so I'll just summarize and paraphrase, but a lot of people are interested in what they can build in the world. That open world, static housing, that claiming this little slice of heaven for myself. I know we have a lot of things in the work that we're excited to unveil in the coming months.
Yeah, I think as it pertains to housing, I think we really have 3 primary focuses in that regard. First and foremost being housing that's buildable by the players in the open world itself. As long as certain parameters are met with the development of local nodes, you'll be able to lay down your claim to a piece of land out in the world. And on that land, you'll have space to build a home. You'll have space to build, farms that you can grow crops in. You'll have space to build different crafting stations and workshops on your piece of land that you can then use towards your proficiencies in different skill sets, such as, weapon crafting, armor crafting, all that kind of stuff, animal husbandry. Housing plays a pivotal role in your character's advancement in basically creating goods for the world around you.
Right.
And I think we understand how important that role is. Outside of that player housing being built on your own in the land you choose, we also have housing that is static within nodes that you can participate in at an early phase of the node's construction and then reap the benefits should that node progress to the later stages, having your home, your static home, growing with it. And those are a finite number of homes per node.
Right. We expect those to be strongly fought over, and it will cause some conflict, and that's kind of what we're looking for in that. They will be a rare resource, these houses, and they'll look really cool, right? So if you come to a node and it starts off at a village and you grab that one housing slot, as it grows through the city and metropolis level, that home is going to grow too. So by the end of the node's progression, you might have a really cool mansion But again, those are going to be rare and hard to get, and people might want to raise your node because they want some housing. So.
Right, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And also just making the houses, trying to make them more modular, because we know that no two players are the same, so making houses just completely static outside of a node, wouldn't necessarily fit the philosophy that we want players to be able to do what they want to do, and build the house that they want to build. So
Yeah,
making it a
absolutely.
farm, or making it a stable for animals, or making it just a home that they want to furnish and look great, that's up to them.
Right.
And then aside from the static housing and the player-built housing and the land, we're also including instance housing in certain nodes when they reach a development stage, that players will be able to own an apartment, maybe in a city, that they could then claim citizenship in order to partake in the government and that kind of stuff.
Right. Just because you missed out on grabbing a house doesn't mean you can't actually live in that node.
Exactly.
So that's our solution to that. And there'll still be plenty of opportunities to decorate those. It just won't have the same kind of cachet that an actual house might have.
Yeah. Good question. Like housing.
Everyone wants a home, right? So I know we're bringing it to a close here, but quickly we wanted to touch on the referral system. We're pretty excited about it, and we think it's going to be a pretty big hit when people, grasp what we're trying to do here. So maybe we should just clear up any misconceptions, or.
Yeah, for sure. So, in my experiences first starting to play MMOs when I was 7 years old, back in 1992, playing Neverwinter on AOL, that was $6 by the hour.
Dating yourself.
Yeah, my mom was not happy about that. So I'll tell you that.
Definitely not. But from my experiences getting early on in MMOs, it's all about, again, the community and the people that you play with. It didn't become so much the game that I was playing, more so that the friends who I had made online, they were playing those games too. And I always found that as we moved from MMO to MMO, we moved with our group, so to speak.
Right.
And we, the players, built the MMO. Without the players, the MMO doesn't exist.
Exactly.
And for the players taking on that responsibility and bringing the community with them to a game, they should be compensated in some way, shape, or form, or rewarded for that. And I think that our referral system really goes to rewarding our players for helping us to organically grow this game into something that can be a very large, massive multiplayer community.
Right.
Right. So, our referral system focuses on who you bring to the game, right? Which is something you do naturally regardless. And by bringing people to the game, you're getting rewarded with 15% of anything that those players spend on the game, whether it be through the cosmetic shop or through their subscription or through anything that the players do in the game. You're getting 15% that you can then apply towards your subscription. You can get cash back from it, or you can use it in the cosmetic shop as credits as well.
I mean, it's as simple as you are bringing value to our game, right? And we want to make sure we thank you for it. I mean, it goes beyond just like, here's a cool, looking thing in the game, right? And now you can actually have something that's usable, and that helps your subscription, and that brings that free-to-play aspect to our game without actually having to follow that kind of economic model.
Or go down the dreadful pay-to-win model in the marketplace.
Right. And that's something we don't want to do. No. So I think this is a good thing for us to.
This is a good balance between.
Balance, that's what I was looking
for. It's a good balance between offering the players something that mitigates the cost of a subscription model, which everything is something that players are normally adverse to. But at the same time, we don't want that pay to win that's been ruining MMOs for the past 10 years in this whole free to play model, right?
Right.
And it makes sense. I understand why companies have to go down the pay to win route, because they need to attract those microtransactions in the marketplace
in order to keep their game healthy.
Absolutely. And that's totally understandable. But at the same time, if we want to get back to what made MMOs great, right, we need to get back to that.
That's close. That's close.
I didn't say again. I didn't say great again. I just said great, right? Okay. So if we want to get back to what made them great, ... we have to kind of find that reciprocal relationship with giving the community something back for helping grow our community, right?
Right, absolutely.
And then at the same time, making sure that pay-to-win aspect never enters our game.
Right.
Just looking at the models and then saying, well, we want to create a new path of least resistance, right?
Absolutely.
And we think that a referral system, which is common in games, we're just taking it a step further for people to build the community that they want to build and have an investment in.
Absolutely. And in addition, companies, AAA studios that go down the route of a model that forces them to spend a lot of money on advertising, that's money that can't be spent on developing the game.
Absolutely. Right.
And this system kind of helps our community grow in a more organic way that doesn't require us then to spend the millions of dollars in advertising, right? Because our community is growing via our community.
Right. And there's incentive to do it.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah. Good question.
Of course, and I mean, really all it boils down to is we're simply inviting you to play the game, invite your friends to play the game. If you guys like it, you stay and play, and you get reward for it. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've gone a little bit longer than anticipated, but we've got a couple of rapid fire questions.
Ooh, rapid fire.
Let's go.
Mostly yes, no, except for the first one.
Exciting.
So, Jeffrey,
Yes.
our senior game designer and lead writer, why the name Ashes of Creation?
So that was a long discussion that we had. The name basically comes from the phoenix is a huge symbol for us. We have some gods. One of those gods' symbol is the phoenix. They may have or may not have created the world. And it may or may not have died, right? So as with all phoenixes,
All right, next question.
Answer ambiguity. Next.
as with all phoenixes, they rise from the ashes, and this is what the players will be a part of. Is the rejuvenation of this world that has been abandoned for so long.
Another point there, in correlation between the name Ashes of Creation is understanding the nature of the world, right? The world is constantly creating, and then there's mechanics for change. And from that change comes new creation, so to speak. So, let's take, for example, the node system. You develop a metropolis after months of work on the server, and then some great battle is fought, and that metropolis falls into the ashes, and out of it again rises more creation.
It's great.
So there's a correlation there in the name and just the general philosophy of the game's mechanics.
Yeah, okay. This is pretty simple, but do we plan on having traditional style raids and dungeons for our players to partake in?
Absolutely.
Yeah, for
Pretty
sure.
There's a yes there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know how much we actually want to say about this, but we're going to have a bunch of different types of dungeons for small groups, dungeons for big groups. Some things will only be able to be tackled by a large number of people. And again, we want to put the massive back in massively. So we want people to participate together and create memories together. So they're important parts of our design.
And generally, I think that our dungeons are going to be, for the most part, open world dungeons. We'll have some instance dungeons as well. But again, it falls back to player choice. Those dungeons and their content is going to be influenced by the decisions that the players have made to move their civilization in the world, right? And those decisions will impact what content you experience in those dungeons.
Yeah, I mean it's totally possible, at least on our whiteboard, that that one server may unlock a dungeon and another server might not, and one server might be getting loot from one dungeon and another server might be getting different loot. So there's a lot of branching that we're going to be putting into this game. And
we definitely want to keep them scalable, keep them flexible, have them for ranges of player quantity and quality level wise. So, we think it's something, we know it's something players want. So definitely.
Yep. And then finally, for our Oceanic players, are we considering
Don't mean to laugh at you,
servers?
We just talked about this in the room a while ago, and we had a funny conversation. So
We love our Oceanic players.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. Even though we don't have players yet, technically.
Technically.
Start the community. Get it growing.
What was the question for the Oceanic players?
Are we considering servers specifically in their region?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we're going to have regional servers, and we plan on being, going after where our player base is. So we don't want to, have people telnetting in all the way from across the ocean. So we'll be
very aware of latency issues.
Yeah.
Everyone is cognizant of
region,
latency and lag in their gameplay. So.
Yeah.
That's definitely something on our minds.
Well, that was a pretty broad Q&A, and
lengthy.
I liked it.
Yeah, we'll probably be doing tons more of these.
Every day.
Every day?
single day.
We'll never make a game. We'll just talk about it.
We're just gonna talk about it. No.
But yeah, we're definitely going to do more of this. It's a lot of fun for us, and I think it's a good way for you guys to get to know us. So yeah, thanks everybody.
Cool. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
No, thank you,
No, thank
Steven.
you. Thank you.
And also with you.
And peace be with you.